You're listening to the League Bound Podcast.
Coming again. Oh, mercy.
Your source for weekly coverage on the future stars of the NBA.
Gives it to Jenkins for the championship.
I'm your co-host, Jake Schrantz.
And I'm your co-host, Branden Blue.
With production for the podcast coming from Broderick Wilken.
With the first pick in the NBA draft.
All right. Welcome back to episode 9 of the League Bound Podcast, where we break down prospects and the best players in college basketball, while also talking about news in the college basketball world and giving an interesting and unique take on it. I'm your co-host, Branden Blue, here with Jake. Jake, how's your day been?
It's been a pretty good day. I'm happy to be back here on the League Bound Podcast. It feels like it's been a minute since we've got to record one of these, so I'm really excited to be back. Brody, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing great, man. We did take a kind of a hiatus last week for spring break and, just to take a quick break around here. But we're back. We're back and stronger than ever. With college basketball and the wrapping up and the Final Four coming this weekend, I think we're going to you'll see a couple shifts in our content just because we'll have different things to cover. We're going to start dipping our toes more into the NBA draft as we're getting closer here. Players are kind of finalizing their positions in the draft, and I guess all we'll have left is teams to solidify their positions. And as we go through that, we're gonna try to get some interesting and fun people to talk to and interview to really give you guys some insight into these players going into the NBA. Now let's take it right into negativity.
Negativity!
Branden, how you doing?
Ooh. It's March Madness. It gets chippy.
But
Blood is shed. Tears are shed. The tensions are high. But I am excited for next Final Four game. Duke, UNC. That is going to be all those years of rivalry in the ACC in the Final Four, which I don't know if that's really ever happened. And I think that we're going to see a really chippy game. Just the fan bases, they're going to be playing in New Orleans and probably one of the biggest stadiums at the Final Four. It's gonna be wild. Coach K's last game, I just know it's gonna get chippy. We may not have a fight, but there's gonna be a lot of text. There's gonna be hard fouls. It's gonna be a gritty game, so I'm ready for it.
Yeah, we're gonna have a rematch from the end of the ACC season. Mark Williams and Armando BACOT. We're gonna get into them a little bit later, but both of them have just been playing out of their mind here in March Madness. So I'm really excited to see how physical it gets inside in this epic matchup to come up.
And it's going to be loud, too, so it's going to be a crazy game.
The Weekly Takes.
next here, we're going to move into the Weekly Takes, where these two gentlemen will have their, obviously, weekly takes. And this week will be on March Madness. I got a couple questions for you guys, and I really want to hear about these NBA prospects and how they've been faring through March Madness. First thing, I really want to hear what your guys' personal favorites for best performances in March Madness so far, and who do you really think is making a big difference on their draft stock coming in?
For me to start off, I'm going to have to rock with my guy, Paulo from Duke. He's just been absolutely crazy, on both ends of the floor, especially, it seems like the later you get into the game, the better he starts to play. That game against Michigan State, he was feasting late. He had, a couple moves, I think, I don't remember who exactly it was on, where he just absolutely annihilated who he was matched up with, whether it was a spin move or he just backed him straight down into the post. Also, he showed some of his versatility, too, stepping out and shooting threes, even pull-up middies. So I have to rock with Paulo. And they're still alive in the tournament. So I think, I'm going to go ahead and say it, I think he's become my number one pick outright, just off of this run alone.
Wow, interesting stuff there. Number 1 pick now for Paolo Banchero. I'm not so sure about that, but I think my player is going to definitely be Bennedict Mathurin from Arizona. I mean, man just was balling out for the Arizona Wildcats this year in the tournament. 22.5 points per game, 5.3 rebounds, 3.5 assists in March Madness. He had some epic plays against TCU. I remember he had that logo 3. He had a massive poster. I think he's someone that has definitely shot up the board for me. Probably ahead of guys like Johnny Davis and maybe even AJ Griffin, depending on how, pre-draft process goes for both of them. But I think Bennedict Mathurin offers just as much talent as any of these guys who he's competing with in that, 4 to 8 range. So Mathurin definitely stepped up in March.
And he's been showing off this kind of clutch factor, hitting, must-get threes to tie up games and just really proving why he could be a very important piece in the NBA.
For sure. My other player here is going to be Chet Holmgren. 11.75 points per game in the tournament. He had 12 rebounds a game, which, when you can rebound more than you score, that may not be, the best thing, but he was just rebounding the ball like crazy against some of these tougher matchups. 3.5 blocks per game, which was probably the most impressive thing he did in the tournament. He fouled out against, in their final matchup, was that against who again?
Arkansas.
So, that was kind of tough. That was kind of controversial. But I think that he was the best player on the court for many of those games for Gonzaga.
I see Branden over here a little bit iffy on that take.
All I'm going to say is...
you know what? I kind of agree with him.
I feel like... I agree with everything else you said up until you said the best player on the court for many of those games, just because of the sole existence of Drew Timme. It seemed like every game of that tournament, pretty much Mark Few's whole game plan was just, all right.
Feed him the ball.
Yeah, like he would just run that like low post action play where he would have Timme on the block and like whoever he was guarding him.
I mean, many people know about this, but I think there was a point where Gonzaga was down and Drew Timme went on Gonzaga went on an 11-0 run, and it was all points scored by Drew Timme in the second half of that game.
He was crazy this tournament. He had 25 Arkansas, 25 versus Memphis. I can't do English. 25 versus Memphis and 32 versus Georgia State. And most of his points were all like in the second half. So the fact that he just scored all those points and like off of just one adjustment to me is so crazy. And nobody was able to stop him, which I find very funny. But
well, just to combat that, my thing with Timme is even though he was putting the ball in the basket, Chet Holmgren was pretty much doing everything else. He was rebounding the ball really well and then just completely dominating the game defensively on the inside. 3.5 blocks per game. I didn't do the math for every single player, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was the highest average in the entire March Madness tournament because, dude, let's take that Memphis matchup. Jalen Duren got the best of him, a couple times in that game, but early on, Duren was kind of trying to set the tone physically, and he would back Chet down right to the goal and try to go up, and Chet would just literally reach up and just stuff him right at the rim. So I don't know why all this Chet Holmgren hate exists. Guy just does what he can to win. He doesn't really make any mistakes. He plays smart. He plays defense. He plays both sides of the ball. I'm not sure why everyone I'm assuming it's just because of the weight. So I don't know.
For mine, I wasn't even going to talk about the weight, actually. I thought he did really good defensively. Mine, I was going to talk about the offensive issues, but we can move on to the next segment.
Yeah. And just one more quick tick. I did find it impressive that Chet did so well against Jalen Duren because they're like basically polar opposites in terms of physicality.
But in my opinion, they both held each other down. I thought it was kind of funny. Chet didn't really have like a crazy offensive game, and neither did Jalen. And Jalen was hot coming into really just March Madness. So,
and kind of moving on here. Now we're going to get into an interesting part that was kind of hard to look at for a lot of NBA prospects. A lot of them just went crazy and just really proved why they are those like destined for those top picks. But who do you guys think had the worst performances? Give me your guys. Give me your worst. The guys who might have hurt their draft stock.
So for me, for the the worst performers of March Madness, I'm gonna have to go with Ty Washington. He really struggled mightily against St. Peter's, who obviously today just went down to it was UNC. So that leads to the Duke. Yeah, that leads to the Duke UNC matchup. But Ty Washington for Kentucky, he had 5 points on 2 for 10 shooting. That's not going to get it done in March, especially if you're one of the lead guards on a top seeded team. And honestly, I think that he solidified himself as definitely not the top point guard in this draft. All year it's been going back and forth. Is it Kennedy Chandler? Is it Ty Washington? Is it, somebody else? But I think after this performance and definitely how Kennedy Chandler played in the tournament, Ty has definitely solidified himself as maybe the 2 or 3 for point guards.
Next, I would like to put a disclaimer on this one. This guy was kind of like, he played bad for a few stretches, but then there are stretches where he had a couple good runs, specifically in that game against Colgate. But Johnny Davis, he's especially as a Naismith Player of the Year candidate, he's somebody you would like to just see be a lot less streaky. Especially, I know we talk about him so much.
We talk about him all the time.
Like I don't even I don't even want to talk about him this much. But it's just it's a thing where you kind of have to, especially since they were second round upsets.
We also probably have a prospect breakdown for him in the next couple of weeks. So
oh yeah,
for sure.
I think that's kind of interesting. I mean, he's probably he is the most covered player on the podcast unintentionally. Mm-hmm. Because he's just been so hot and cold.
Like, he had 17 points versus their game against Iowa State, but it was like on 25% shooting. And that Colgate game, he had 25, I think. But he shot so poorly in that first half. But then he did kind of fix it, and he did have kind of a clutch stretch to close out that game, I remember, because I think he had like a steal and dunk, and then he had a very clutch 3 as well. So Johnny Davis, the issue is just he's not as consistent as we would like to see him, and it's just begging questions at the next level. Yeah,
for me, just one sequence that just showed to me the inconsistency that Johnny goes through sometimes. There was a play where I think it was around the top of the arc, man just shot a 3, airballed it, literally chased it down, followed a shot, got his own rebound, and the ball was like kind of trailing out of bounds. He jumped out of bounds, grabbed it, and tried to throw it back behind his head, and it just smacked in the back of the backboard, and it was one of the funniest plays of the entire tournament.
I think I did chuckle at my house when I saw that. That was so funny.
And you know what? This kind of leads to an interesting question, because with him so hot and cold, we also talk about him just not being used as like in his offense. Can some of his like lack of productivity and his hot and coldness be directly related to like his team and like his coaching and just the offense he's being ran in? Do you think that could translate differently in the NBA? Or do you think, I think we talk about a lot how we don't even think he'll transfer very well into the NBA.
I feel like Johnny trying to translate to the NBA, we've seen it pretty consistently throughout the year, whether he's playing really good like he does against Purdue or he's playing really bad against some of these other teams. Guy's going to get up at least around 20 shots a game, and, sometimes he goes 4 for 20 and sometimes he goes 14 for 20 and gives you 33 points. So I don't know if that's reliable enough to, select him over someone like AJ Griffin, who is going to knock down about 40% of his threes and be a good catch and shoot guy. Benedict Mathurin, who kind of plays a very similar game to Johnny Davis, just a better in pretty much every way, in my opinion. Other options even at guard, like Kennedy Chandler and Ty Washington. So I feel like Johnny Davis just didn't shine enough late in the season to where he solidified himself over anyone else for the NBA.
And I think at the starting of the season, we even talked about him as being like a top 2 or 3 guard in the draft. And I think, at least personally for us, he's dropped a ton.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think I'm looking at his game log right now, and really the difference in some of those first games was just how hot he was shooting to start. But then you can steadily kind of see the decline, right? Really once Big Ten play starts, I feel like. So it is what it is. But Johnny, I don't know. I hope you prove us wrong at the next level. I want to say that. I don't like coming out here and being like, that he's going to suck. But
Well, he was one of the most fun players to watch for us in the Big Ten just because of how hard he plays every game. Like, he attacks the rim with a lot of ferocity, and just when his game is on, he's really fun to watch, but just when he's struggling from the field, it's just like, what are you doing?
Next, really isn't even somebody I'd say like their stock went down, but somebody who I just was kind of hoping to see more from, especially during March Madness. Chet, this is just on one side of the ball, because he actually did really well defensively. And especially in that Memphis game when he was matched up against Jalen Duren, and a lot of people were looking at that. But honestly, this could be just a thing with Mark Few, because I know Gonzaga's coach, for those who don't know. I know I talked earlier about how Drew Timme was a lot of their offensive focal point, but I would have liked to see them go to Chet a little bit more, especially because, even coming into the season, one of the main reasons why he was a number one ESPN 100 player was because of not just what he can do defensively, but because of his skill set offensively, and how people thought he was going to be somebody who could maybe even handle the ball, which we have seen throughout the season. But I wanted to see them, be a little bit more, try and be a little bit more experimental with it. Maybe have him handle the ball, come off screens, or have him come off ball screen and shoot, because it felt like watching Chet play, a lot of the points he was getting they were either just second chance points, or, it was just we'll run a little post-action play where he'll get a catch and shoot, or he'll just catch it in the post and just throw it over somebody. And so to me, it was kind of this might not even be 100% on Chet, but it feels like we've seen Chet just kind of be more of a defensive player at times throughout the season. And I think one of the main reasons why people were high on Chet at the beginning was just because of his two-way potential. But that's all I wanted to say about that.
All right. And moving on from just talking about NBA draft prospects, what was your guys' biggest surprises in terms of teams getting upset, and the upset team that I guess really ruined your bracket? Kind of covering it a bit, we all made brackets and stuff. I think we were all pretty confident, and I think it turns out that, they all fell apart pretty quickly.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that, because my biggest surprise team to go down early was Kentucky. It has to be Kentucky. I picked them to go to the national championship against Arizona. Both of those teams are already out, didn't even make it to the Final Four. So Kentucky losing to St. Peter's in the first round was easily the biggest shock, other than maybe UMBC, maybe the second biggest shock of March Madness history, as Kentucky, a 2 seed, losing in the first round to a 15 seed. Really just disappointing. Oscar Tshiebwe dominated in that game, but just got absolutely no other help from any of the other good Kentucky players. We talked about Ty Washington struggling in that game. So Kentucky was definitely the biggest surprise for me.
For me, I'd have to say Tennessee, because in my bracket that I actually have doing really well right now, I'm probably not going to place, but I had Tennessee in my national championship versus Duke, and to see them lose to a team like Michigan, who I have to give props to because I didn't think they were going to do as well as they did in the tournament, but for them to go and knock out Tennessee really hurt my bracket. Really just that whole SEC tournament, Tennessee looked like a well-polished team. And so I thought that this was a year we were going to see them go deep into the tournament. But I thought wrong. Also, I know everybody's talking about them, but I feel like we have to acknowledge them on the pod as well. St. Peter's is just doing crazy right now. And what they did to Kentucky and managing to get to the Elite Eight, I have to give props.
Round of applause.
Yeah. Because not only did they knock out Kentucky, but they knocked out Purdue with Jaden Ivey, Zach Edey, and Travion Williams. So that, to me, is just crazy. Shout out to them. And they had a really good season.
Yeah, St. Peter's, back to them after they take down Kentucky, if they can follow this up for maybe a year or two afterwards with continuing success and making it to the tournament, they have a really young coach who is obviously very good. Look out for them in the recruiting, because they, in a smaller conference, they could be almost like a Gonzaga-esque entity if they can start to be consistently good. Kind of like how we see Loyola Chicago every year just make this tournament as a top 10 seed. And obviously they didn't lose, or they lost in the first round this year, but in the past, 5 or 6 years, they've made some solid runs as a, mid-major school.
And who knows? That was terrible. All right. I think that does it for our weekly takes. March Madness is going crazy right now. The Final Four and Natty will all be covered in the next one, and I guess we'll talk about how those players in there did, especially Paulo. I think we're really looking forward to see how he does and fares in the rest of the season. Ochai's in there too. That should be very entertaining to watch. But
Rock Chalk.
let's get into League Him. Why don't we?
League him.
Yeah, so for this week on League Him, we actually have 2 players. Me and Branden are going to split this one. But for me, it's going to have to be Mark Williams, the center from Duke. I imagine everyone who's been watching March Madness this year saw that massive dunk he had late in the game against Texas Tech. Basically to ice the game. He was really good there. He played great for Duke in March pretty much all tournament long. He's led them with Banchero and Roach and Keels and Moore and AJ Griffin to the Final Four now. 13 points per game, 7.5 rebounds, 3.4 blocks per game in the tournament so far. We talked about Chet earlier, with all those blocks in March, but Mark Williams is doing a lot of similar things, and they've gotten farther than Gonzaga, so kind of an interesting turn of events there, but I think he's definitely raised his draft stock in this tournament, and we may even see him sneak into the lottery coming after some of the other bigs like Chet and, Jalen Duren.
And now for my League Him Player of the Week, we have Armando BACOT of North Carolina. Put that boy in the league. Ugh. Okay, so for Armando BACOT, really, this UNC team, I wanted to have them going deep in my bracket, but I was concerned because of their lack of depth. But with a guy like Armando, who's just been an absolute enforcer in the paint, really just all season, and now he's getting to show it on this main stage. I think Armando, he's solidified that he's probably not going to be a first-round pick, but he could definitely be a second-round draft pick. And I think I genuinely think he has the potential to be a player in the NBA who could be a solid role player and just a backup kind of like tough, gritty guy.
Some sixth-man stuff.
Yeah, and he's shown it all throughout this tournament with clutch boards, defense, and just being like kind of the identity of this team because he's been here for a while. He's been there since Cole Anthony was there at North Carolina. So I'm really happy to see this guy having success, and just seeing them make it to the Final Four is honestly crazy. I feel like if St. Peter's hadn't made the run they did, people would be talking about UNC's run a lot more. So,
and one fun thing about both these players, they're going to be matching up like we've been talking about all episode. Duke and UNC, one of the most fun matchups you can get in the Final Four. So make sure you guys tune in for that.
It's going to be insane. It's going to be chippy, and hopefully we get some negativity to talk about next week.
yes, sir.
Prospect breakdown.
And now, our prospect breakdown. Keegan Murray. We are ready to break you down. Physicals, 6'8", 225, sophomore from Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and on the season he has been averaging 23.5 points a game, 8.7 rebounds, 1.5 assists, and I do believe that he leads Power 5 schools in scoring. So Keegan Murray he's not a cat to play around with.
Yeah, Keegan Murray just barely, if ever, takes a bad shot. Takes what the defense gives him. He was really solid in their round 1 matchup of the tournament against Richmond. He had 21 points, 9 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 block, 1 steal on 53% shooting. That is very efficient, and that's something we've seen continue, since the start of the regular season. He was one of the most efficient players in all of college basketball. Looking here on Tankathon, his player efficiency rating was a 37.8, which is really, really good. 134.6 offensive rating. These are numbers that you don't see every day from, NBA draft prospects. He was a good three-point shooter this year at almost 40% from 3, and he's got some size to him, 6'8", 225. He can really get it done on the wing or, inside, because I also think he has enough strength to compete with NBA athletes. He routinely moved to, bigs that he was playing against in the Big Ten that were in his way in the paint just to get those easy layups. That was one way he got a lot of his points, was just driving in the lane, getting a pass from one of the guards on Iowa, and just getting an easy bucket. I think he was the easiest scorer to watch in the Big Ten this year, as Branden kind of alluded to, with the Power 5 scoring, averaging over 23 a game. And just when you watch him, he just it makes it look so easy. Kind of like how Paulo, his offense looks so easy. He just kind of takes it good shots, makes most of them with how efficient he is. And he's also pretty solid on defense as well. What do you think, Branden?
I mean, yeah, I really agree with everything you said. One thing I do think that is underrated about his game, just from like watching film, is just kind of his ability to handle the ball around the perimeter. It doesn't really look as smooth as it could, but I feel like that's a skill that's going to be really useful in the NBA. Somebody like Keegan, too, he plays really well out in transition, and the NBA is a lot faster game. And I really think he's going to thrive in a setting like the NBA where, scoring is at a premium. Also, another thing I like about him is that he's somebody who doesn't need to dominate the ball, because you can tell that he knows how to play without the ball, especially when he had some of those big shots in the Big Ten tournament, I believe. He was really... It didn't feel like he was really hogging the ball or just creating his shot. He was just getting to a spot and they would feed him. And I feel like that's a really underrated skill to have, going into the NBA, because especially now, a lot of people, I feel like they just don't really know what to do when the ball's not in their hands.
And with him coming a little bit later in the draft, I'm sure as a role player, he would be huge for any team to pick him up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I don't even know if he's going to go late in the draft. He'll probably go top 6.
Yeah. Honestly,
top 6. Okay. I thought I meant later in the lottery, but even then, I guess.
Honestly, though, me personally, I see him kind of rising. I don't know, how far I see him rising, but just with the way he played late in the season, I genuinely feel like he's somebody who I could even see being a sleeper out of this class potentially. Somebody, just because you have guys like Jabari and Paulo who do somewhat similar things and kind of do it better, but at the same time, he does it more at a more volume rate. So we'll see what happens. Plus, he has a clutch gene too, so I don't know.
I feel like with Keegan Murray, his skill set and efficiency, any team that drafts him, he's going to thrive there. I could see a team like, San Antonio. He just seems like the type of player that would go for the Spurs and just be one of those players. It's like, dang, Keegan Murray again. We got to play him. He's just so efficient. And any team in the lottery, I think Trailblazers, Kings, Spurs, Pelicans, Wizards, he fits into pretty much any roster because he's 6'8", so he can play multiple positions on the wing and down low with his, floor spacing ability. So there's not really a team that can draft him that wouldn't really fit well at all.
One team I think he would probably do. One team I would like to see him go is, I don't know how the lottery's going to look, but maybe Houston kind of drops a little bit and to that 6 or 7 range. I would like to see him play there, just to kind of fill out their backcourt a little bit. And I feel like he just play well with that style of guys, kind of, because the guys they have are kind of ball dominant. And so Keegan just kind of, he'd probably be in and out of the paint a little bit, but him playing without the ball, I think, could give them a little more, I guess, I don't want to say spacing, but because he does bring spacing, but I guess a little bit more fluidity and a lot less stagnancy to their offense. So,
yeah, and for me, for a team that fits, this is one of the rare times where I really don't think there's a single team that he fits to the best, in my opinion, just because any team here in the lottery is looking for a guy who has good size, good shooting ability, hustle on defense, and efficiency on offense. So, pick any team here in the lottery. Anyone could use a player like Keegan Murray.
Trivia.
Sir, it's trivia time.
Trivia.
And with that, we will go into trivia. where I ask these two gentlemen, well, I guess Chife's in the room here with us too. He is our main vocal guy for all of our introductions.
No.
Yeah.
Looked at you like.
He's also a Wisconsin native, and we'll be seeing him for the Johnny Davis podcast to really let us know about him. We got 3 questions for these gentlemen, and we're switching it up a bit. I will have you guys tap or basically smack the table to almost buzzer in for this, because the first person to buzz in is the first person that gets to answer this question. If they get it wrong, it moves on to the next person. And so on. I'll give you probably 5 seconds to answer the question if you buzz in, so please don't just buzz in every time to buzz in.
So this is becoming more of a game show now, huh?
A little bit.
It's already a game show.
All right. So going in to the first question of trivia, who has had the most appearances in the NCAA tournament?
Is it UCLA?
Wrong. Next person to tap in, or just smack the table.
Is this
Kansas.
Also wrong. All right, Branden.
I was gonna ask. I'm gonna have to say Duke.
All right, you guys are all wrong. It was actually Kentucky.
That was whatever, bro.
They've had 58 appearances and 160 something wins, I think.
That's crazy.
It is this one is a range question. I'll actually have no one tap in for this one because it doesn't actually make sense.
Is there any multiple choice this week? That's where I thrive.
There is no multiple choice this week,
Oof.
unfortunately. So
Jake is about to get exposed.
You're gonna have to choose wisely here.
Mickey Mouse trivia winner.
As this question has a range that you guys get to pick from,
Scoreboard.
I'm gonna have everyone pick a range, and then I'm gonna tell you who was the closest. All right. So no one got that first one right. I mean, I feel like at this point, 300 career NCAA tournament points is a lot, and only a very select amount of players have actually achieved this. How many players in the history of March Madness have surpassed 300 career points? This is in a range of 1 to 10 players.
So wait, we're guessing a range or we're guessing a single number?
It is a single number, but I'm giving you a range from 1 to 10 to guess from, in case you don't know the exact number.
I'm going to buzz in first, and I'm going to say, are we going also closest to the number here?
Yes, closest to the number will get the...
Okay, fair enough. Let me go 4.
I'm going to say 6.
Branden?
I'm gonna say 5.
And the answer is 9.
Wow.
So Chife gets it right here.
So I'm already winning today, so y'all mark me down as undefeated.
Chife's about to steal a win from both of these two
That's
gentlemen.
unreal.
But we do have one more question, so someone can tie it up. And if you tie it up, I'll just make another question. I don't care. I have a bunch here. How many tournament spots did March Madness have in the 1950s?
16.
32.
All right, well, Chife answered first anyways. It was 16.
Wow.
I'm about to beat
Chife
I
just...
told y'all.
This is... I'm not going to lie. This is kind of a fever dream trivia section. But Chife just swept and destroyed our two trivia gentlemen here. And
I was trying to tell them they didn't want the smoke, but...
Hey, you got one win.
we'll have him back on for the Johnny Davis
We'll see you.
podcast. And we'll see if these two gentlemen can redeem him. But in this case, this has been the League Bound podcast. We'll see you next after the Final Four and National Championship. We'll give you guys a little bit of our thoughts on those last draft pick players that come out of those games, and we'll see if they perform well or not. Jake?
Yeah, man. Thanks for listening to the League Bound podcast. This is episode 9. Great to be back at it again with these guys here. It's really, really fun. Make sure you guys follow us on social media. You can follow me at Jacob Schrantz on Instagram and Twitter.
You can follow me at Branden.Blue with 2 E's on Instagram.
And you can follow me at Broderick Wilken on Twitter and at Broderick Wilken on Instagram. And also Broderick Wilken on YouTube. Also, the League Bound podcast is on Spotify and YouTube, just titled League Bound. Subscribe, rate us 5 stars on Spotify. That is a feature now. We really appreciate it. We love doing the podcast. as always. Next episode, don't have a prospect breakdown picked yet, but I'm sure it will be a heater. And see you in the next one.
So we're acknowledging I swept that, right?
Yeah, you took it.
Mm-hmm. Just reminding.
Yeah.
Just reminding. What you going to keep to leave out here?
I'm about to snatch that for real.